Hey, hope you're keeping well. I'm with Jay Carter, who is Golf New Zealand national coach and also host of a brilliant podcast called Talking Performance. Cheers for jumping on, Jay.
No worries. Thanks for having me. Pretty excited to be here.
Cheers. So I was just thinking about starting out, and would you explain to me kind of like what a golf coaching session would look like? What, say, a typical one, say, with a performance golfer, say someone who wants to get places?
Yeah, right. I guess there's probably two ways to look at that, or two parts to that. One would be your traditional model of golf coaching, which you possibly experienced before. You show up to your local club or driving range, and there's a coach there, and that'll be a 60-minute session, often limited to what what environment you're in, whether that's a driving range or what you've got access to. So that'll tend to focus on the golf swing, so the technical side of things. But probably to answer your question, I don't do too much of that stuff within my role. Probably work more in the performance space, which sometimes the players that are in our national program will have their own technical coach, and I can either back that person up or do some stuff around performance. So I guess I'm fortunate that I'm not bound by time, so I'm not generally bound by 60-minute intervals when working with the players. I'll spend time, whether we'll have multi-day camps or get in for training weekends, where players will have their own, goals for each session that they want to achieve, and we'll have plenty of service providers around us. But from a performance point of view, look at most of the pillars. In the past, we've probably looked at them in isolation sometimes, like technical, tactical, mental, physical. Looked at them in isolation, but obviously they, as you know, they overlap, and they, what your physical performance is going to affect your mental performance and your tactical performance. So it's all merges in together. So for us, it's around trying to get data. One of the good things about golf is you can get tons of performance data. So one of the apps that we use literally has a GPS of every single shot that a player hits in performance, has the distance, and it has it benchmarked as to what their standards from that distance are, how they relate to their peers, how they relate to what their aspirations are, and that breaks down for every single shot, and then the amount of data you can drill into there. So that's probably the place to start. That old saying of data just allows you to ask better questions. And so from a performance coaching point of view, I want to try and grab as much data as we can, but then try and bring that data to life through questions and relationships. And most of the time, you need that strong relationship before you can start really digging into someone's performance. Not sure if that answers your question, mate. That was a bit all over the place.
It's cutting out. I can't hear you properly. I think we'll have to switch over.
Is that my end or
to Zoom after all that chat?
Oh no.
I don't know.
That zooms on that link, that you sent.
Is it
Is it my end, maybe?
How's your internet? It says recording continues smoothly. Live video will return when their internet improves.
It says good, but I must admit that's probably not the first time I've had that feedback. What I'll do is I'll hotspot my phone, because that's pretty reliable.
Yeah, maybe hotspot your phone, because I just kind of was getting every third word.
Right. I've got all the bars up on my internet, but
Okay, back.
Is that any better?
Yeah, I can hear you now. So did you? Yeah, sorry about that. Did you switch over to your phone?
Yeah, just gone to hotspot on my phone. Is that better?
Yeah, as of now, yeah, I can hear you straight through. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Um, yeah, sorry about that. I think we'll start again. Um, yeah, I think we'll start again because I couldn't hear.
Yeah, no worries.
Couldn't hear.
Went on a bit of a
Yeah,
ramble
perfect.
anyway, a bit of a rant.
Well, that's always the best, and it's good chat. You know yourself. When you're hosting, it's always good when people do go on a bit of a ramble. Right, I will start again. Sorry with that.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. I kind of got the gist of some of it, but I couldn't quite hear. Um, anyway, we'll go
And
from
but
there.
it is
I'll
better
figure
now.
it out. It is, yeah. I suppose just chat to me for 20 seconds of your how you edit it. I don't know. I edit your podcast just so I can hear you
Yeah. Okay.
talk.
I don't really edit it, to be honest, which is I've got to get better at. I literally pretty much just cut the little bit of intro chat at the start, and then at the end, when I press stop, that's pretty much it. And then I just chuck that into Audacity. I don't do unless something's happened in the podcast, like like this sort of thing. I'll edit that. Obviously, I edited something with my last one with David Hill, but yeah, otherwise I just wing it. But I've got to get more professional, Brian.
Cool. Perfect. Yeah, that was clear all the way through. Yeah, perfect. Radio, we'll go again.
Is there a delay at all?
Um, I'm not sure. Don't think so.
Okay.
I wonder. I wonder if we just go over to Zoom. Do you reckon?
Oh, I'm easy, man. Like what you said about the internet, that wouldn't be inconsistent with what
No.
people say about this internet. So
Okay.
the
Oh, sorry.
phone
I
might
was just
work,
thinking.
but up to you.
Yeah, the phone should because I usually nearly always am further over in the house. I usually always use the phone, but the phone should be good. Yeah. No, it should be. We should be good.
All right. If we have to start again, we'll say la vie.
It'll all be saved anyway. If we have to, whatever, switch over later on, all good. It'll all be saved, and we can just continue over if we need to on Zoom or whatever. All right.
Yeah.
Hey, hope we're keeping well. Today I'm chatting to Jay Carter, who is Golf New Zealand national coach and also host of a brilliant podcast called Talking Performance. Cheers for jumping on, Jay.
Cool, man. Thanks, Brian. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, so I suppose first up, chat to me about what a typical coaching session for you would be like with, I suppose, performance golfer.
Yeah. Good question, because it's probably quite different to potentially what most people associate with a golf lesson. Which is show up at a driving range or a golf club, often in 30 to 60-minute intervals, and you're limited to what you can do there based on the time it takes to play golf. If your average one hole takes sort of 15 minutes, and a golfer might hit three or two full shots, a chip shot, and two putts. And so if they do that for an hour, they're only hitting 8 full shots, 4 chips, and 8 putts. So it's not too much in terms of the amount of repetitions that you can get. So the easy way around that for most golf coaching sessions is at a driving range where you might be able to hit 50 to 100 shots in an hour, and obviously increase your repetition and give the coach an opportunity to see. But I guess most of that work in a driving range or a traditional golf coaching is done in the technical space, on the golf swing or the chip shot or putting stroke. And the coach will then basically just provide technical intervention for the player to go and work on. Probably what I do is a little bit different to that with the national squad. Most of the players will have their own technical coach, and so my job will be to take care of some of the other performance factors that make up a golfer, and so that's the normal tactical, technical, mental, physical, organisational. But in the past, we probably used to coach them maybe in silos, and we would do tactical stuff removed from technical stuff, and mental stuff removed from tactical stuff, and whereas now, as you know, they're all interwoven and they all merge together, and your physical performance or your physical capability will impact your mental performance, and they're all going together. And it's even one of those things I think we've got to think every shot we hit in training or everything we do in training is an opportunity to grow our mental capacity as well as our tactical capacity and physical capacity, as long as we are diligent with what we do. So in golf, we're blessed with heaps of data. So every shot that a player hits, we can measure with GPS, or they are measured with GPS, how far away they are from the hole, how far away that ball went, what the standards and benchmarks are for players who are hitting shots from that distance. So by the time players, at the moment, most of our players are overseas in the States, and I just get an alert on my phone saying that they've uploaded a round, and I can literally get a Google Earth view of the golf course with every shot they've hit, how close it did go, how close it could have gone, where they were aiming. But a lot of that can be overwhelming. And then we have a radar system which is called TrackMan, and that tracks everything the ball does and everything the club does. It's a Doppler radar, so it tracks everything that moves in front of it. So in terms of a training session, we can look at exactly why the ball did what it did with no doubt, no question. It's all just, I guess, physics and maths, two subjects I wasn't particularly good at school, but thankfully got the TrackMan to take care of that for me. So again, but a lot of that data, whether it's GPS or whether it's the TrackMan, can be overwhelming for a player, or too much for a player. They don't need to know a lot of that. And so my job is probably to use that data to ask the right questions to try and get performance outcomes. And that's probably the thing that a friend of mine told me years ago is I loved the data for a long time, and I just kept pretty much repeating the data back to the player. And a friend of mine said, all data does is allow you to ask better questions. And so I thought that was a real shift for me to start going, the data doesn't need to be information transfer, with the attempt to probably show the player how much I knew, just from my own ego, rather just use it to inform better questions. So probably quite different. Not sure if that really answers your question, but probably different to what traditional coaching or golf coaching is.
Yeah, no, brilliant. That is mad with the players overseas and you being able to see literally every shot and what they're doing, and keep track that way. That's class. It's interesting you say about the data being overwhelming, and something I think about quite a bit, in that rugby is similar in that there's so much data, be it a player's personal run meters and all that kind of stuff, or else the game itself. And yeah, it can be overwhelming, I think. And I think that players then, if they get too caught up in it, for sure, you can just lose track of actually playing rugby or playing golf.
We have old historic data, I think, with golf, like things like fairways hit is the most common one, that people measure how many fairways they hit, but it actually has absolutely zero relevance to how you play, but it's easy to measure. So, and then I guess without too much thought, you think about it and go, oh yeah, that makes sense. It must be a good thing to do to hit the fairway, but it actually has no performance relevance whatsoever. But for probably 100 years, it would have been a statistic that we measured. I wonder, is there any stuff like that in rugby where you're measuring stuff and then after a while you think, actually, what are we measuring this for?
That's interesting, because I always, fairways and greens in regulation. I played golf when I was younger, and will hopefully get back into it. Rugby, it's you need to. I think that you need to look at your team first of all, and you need to be connected to the game and the performance and your team versus connected to the data. So you can look at things like 22 entries, you can look at time in opposition half, you can look at all these different things. But if you're with a team who, like France, for instance, I was watching them against Scotland the last day, and they can score from anywhere, and they just break out and boom, and they just score, and they're just like incredible. So time in the opposition 22 wouldn't be as important for them as it would be for other teams, such as in the Premiership, Exeter Chiefs and Leicester Tigers. These other teams used to get down there and then stay down there and then kind of like beat you into submission. Whereas, some other teams, they look to just make a line break from kind of anywhere from 60 out. So I think that, yeah, you can't be connected to the data. You got to be connected to your team. And I suppose that's kind of obvious, but yeah, it's, yeah, like you say with the golfer, I suppose if you're driving at 350 yards and you're a yard off the fairway, it's better than if you're driving at 250 yards and you're on the fairway.
Yeah, exactly right. And probably to your point there, we have players who do play the game differently. So it's about knowing them. So Kazuma Kabori, who's a young golfer from Christchurch, he's just had an outstanding summer in the US, and he doesn't hit it as far as the other lads. So it is important for him to hit the fairways, but for the other guys who maybe hit it, to your point, 350, well then they don't have to focus as much on that. So yeah, probably similar thing, like knowing the team or knowing the player and how that data is going to shape those questions.
Yeah. And so then would a lot of, for golfers in New Zealand, it's get over to the States and get a scholarship there in NCAA?
It is an option for them, and a lot of our female golfers certainly do. We have a few male golfers over there, but historically we haven't really had our best players go. So if we go through our best male players, not to say that isn't a way, but because there are some really good players who have gone and are currently there, but Danny Lee, Ryan Fox, and Dan Hillier, who are our three players on major tours at the moment around the world, they didn't go to college. And if you look through Australia, not too many of the top Australians go to college. In fact, I would almost say it's zero. So the amateur system in this part of the world, obviously we have to travel heaps. As you know, we're in the middle of nowhere. But the opportunities for international amateurs is, like if I think about Kazuma, he played at the start of the year, he was in Australia for 3 tournaments. Then he came home and had the New Zealand Open, the New Zealand PGA. Then he went up to Japan for a few tournaments. For the last 3 months, he's been in America. He's due home next week. And then he'll have a month or so here, and then Abu Dhabi in October, and back to Australia for the back half of the year. So, whereas if you go to college, so he is doing a degree through, I think maybe through Massey online. But if you go to college, you only really play 8 events. And a lot of people, college is a good system, but yeah, we probably don't lose too many of our top level players just because I think they get better tournament exposure to the international events than they would in college, where they only play maybe 8 events a year.
And then just going back to what you mentioned earlier about the, say, tactical, technical, mental, physical, chat about the mental side. Like how do golfers get helped with that? Or I just find it so mad. I think it's the number one sport where the mental side is so important, or in that one shot over 270 odd shots can make the difference. Like one lapse in concentration. Yeah. And you see it often that like someone goes into the water at the end, or it's just mad. But yeah.
Yeah. So we've used David Galbraith for probably the last 15 years within the program. And he's done a great job because he's probably integrated it into life rather than just seeing it as a golf thing. So, like only using your mental skills when you're in your pre-shot routine, or and it has evolved. I remember chatting with a rugby player who knew David probably. Oh, this would be maybe 10 years ago, and he said to me, he said, "Oh, what have you got on tonight?" I said, "Oh, David Galbraith's coming in to speak to the group," and David was working with his rugby team at the time, and he said, "What have you got DG coming in for? Like, he's all about dealing with fear, but there's no fear in golf." And I just thought it's a good point. It's not like we're playing a sport where 120 kg beast of a human's trying to, knock you on the ground, or playing cricket where someone's firing a missile at you 150 clicks. Not much can happen if you miss a putt. You just tap the next one in. But I think the fear, that primal fear, is still there. And so, there's the judgment and the amount of stuff that can go on in your head prior to hitting a shot. Nothing's moving. You're stationary, the ball's stationary. It's not like some of those sports where you can just react and, I guess, get rid of your conscious brain out of it. I think the fact that your conscious brain's so active is what makes it such a challenge. DG does some awesome stuff. Like, one of his classic ones is he'll come in and we're often only in a room of say 10 to 20 players, but he'll do it with everyone, management. Everyone has to do it. And he'll just random number generate. Everyone will have a number and he'll just press random number generator on his phone. And if your number comes up, you have to sing. So you have to get up and sing one of the songs as the ants go marching one by one. So you got to stand up. Because it's one of those things where he said, like prior to the number, prior to him pressing the button, what's going on in your mind, and it's all this fear of, oh, I hope he doesn't press my number, and there's things like, oh, maybe I should get up and go to the bathroom, or not make eye contact, and all these things that he said, these are exact things that will happen to you when you face pressure on the golf course. And how do you want to face it? No one likes doing it. We have got one guy in our academy who's a lead singer in a band, so there's a bit wasted on him that trick. But for most of us, you're just sitting there thinking, oh no. And always, I've never had it when my number hasn't come up, so I'm not even sure I trust his random number generator. I just think he just looks around the room and go, right, 18, and of course I'll go, all right, that was me. And he'll often do things like that. What are you doing in your week that makes you uncomfortable, that puts you outside of your comfort zone? Even things like cold showers, public speaking, any opportunities you can. So not really much of it has to do with golf. He will, work a little bit into the golf stuff, but I quite like that approach rather than just thinking about that siloed approach to, let's do visualization when you're doing your pre-shot routine. But if you have these bad habits outside of that, then that 20 seconds when you do your pre-shot routine is not going to be massively beneficial.
That's class. Yeah, I've had DG on this pod. He's unreal, and I read his book. Just finished there a while ago. Or I've opened it again, but I love that. And it's funny when you were talking, I was thinking about cold showers. Like, I'm hard out on them every single morning. Just calms my mind, and that's exactly what you need in golf. And it's interesting you say, or the rugby player said, that golf is different, because I think rugby is easier in that it's just all action. So you are just in the game, it's all action, and you're just immersed in the game. Whereas with golf, you have so much time to think. Like, you've 2 minutes between each shot, or you have so long to think, and that's the challenge. Whereas in rugby, often, if it's a fast paced game, you don't have that much time to think. So, yeah, I think golf is far more difficult in that sense. And I love that about, yeah, just your day to day. You have to live it, don't you?
Yeah. There are a couple of probably things I think about. One is when I played in the New Zealand Open when I was about 19, and it wasn't so New Zealand Open's the biggest event here on our calendar, professional event, and it wasn't the first time I played in it, but I actually froze on the first tee. I not even metaphorically speaking, I literally froze and I couldn't move. And it was the most bizarre thing where I literally, it was like I was looking at somebody else's. I had no control over anything. That and I think that was just the build up of all the cognitive thought. But it would have been. I remember I was sitting in a room just behind where I am now with DG. This would be 10 years later when I'm coaching and I have no desire to play, and he said to me, so we just club golf on a Saturday. He said to me, I want you to go out and play on Saturday with your members and shoot 84. I was like, I can't do that. Well, they'll think I'm not very good, and what will they say? And he went, no, you need to go and shoot 84. I just said, no, I don't think I can. It won't be good for business. I'm a golf coach. What is that saying? And he said that's exactly why you never made it and you never would, because you're too worried about what everybody thought and you weren't willing to put yourself out there and just fail. And so I thought, oh yeah, okay, I'll have a go at that. So I went out and I put my name down on the Saturday and I tried to shoot. I went out with the intention of shooting 84, and I think I shot 71 because I got halfway down the first hole and just went, oh no, I can't do this. These guys will think, oh, I can't play. And I was really disappointed in myself at the end of it. I was like, God, DG's right. Like, why can't you just let go and intentionally shoot 84? So not being a dick about it, but it can be quite hard to shoot 84 if, maybe intentionally quite a lot worse than you normally do. And then so the next week I went out to try it again and I think I shot 70. And so I just could not bring myself. And it was really interesting to go. He just said basically you've got to get over that. You literally have to just go and fail. And it makes sense. And people always say that, got intentional failure and it's all good. But it's so much harder than you think. It took me ages to finally, I did do it in the end, but it took ages. And he said to me, you can't tell anybody that you're doing it. You've literally just got to go out and do it. And then, they'll say things like, oh, yeah, you're not very good, or I'm not coming to you for coaching. And you can't go, oh, I had to do it. It was a deer. So, and I wished I had have had that back. I wished I had known DG back when I was 19 at the Open standing on the tee. But I often do think, would I have been brave enough already to do? Because the work I think that he gets you to do, you have to be incredibly brave and incredibly courageous and fully committed. And I think that's why he gets such good success, because those that do work, they're all in, and it's hard to be all in that space.
That's mad. Yeah, I love it. And when you were saying when you were saying, yeah, he told me to shoot 84, I was thinking, geez, you'd be able to shoot 84. But I didn't think the intentional failing. Yeah, I was like, of course you'd shoot that. And it's so true. It's so true. It's so true. Not caring about what people think. And I kind of it's always working, but about 2 years ago, I said enough and that I wasn't caring anymore. It's a process in that I'd say 15 years ago, when people say you get people chirping or whatever when you're playing, or people giving you comments, you kind of like, I don't care about you, I'm going to just do it anyway. And for me, it was a process of like trying to not care about what people thought or what, yeah, what anyone else thought. But about 2 years ago, I was just like, I have to really stop. And with say putting content out online or starting the podcast, putting content out online, like you want it to be perfect, and then that holds you back from ever doing it. And I just made the decision. I was
Mm.
like, I'm just gonna put it out there and learn as I go. And that was scary, but it's kind of it's it's so freeing as well, isn't it, when you do it?
Yeah. I had a thing with for a while there, so um, I tried to do a lot of that stuff, and that DG was saying, and still do, consider him one of my best mates, but well, not no, but and uh, um, probably I probably used it as an excuse. Hopefully, I was trying to think of how I can say this to have it make sense, but what I found was by not caring, I would inadvertently lower my standards. And so I thought long and hard about that because it's easy to not care if you don't try, but then you defeat the purpose of the not caring. And so I tend to like acronyms. So I came up with this acronym SEAC. And so that for me meant high standards, zero expectations, and high acceptance. So that meant that for me, when I went out to shoot 84, I didn't just act like a idiot and intent, just obviously um, not try and stuff. So I tried to make my standards, maintain my standards really high. So I made sure I did my pre-shot routine. I picked targets and then the zero expectations. And so over time, this is how I try and play golf now. So have high standards, zero expectations, and then high acceptance of whatever happens. And that made a big difference to me because for a while there, I think I just had low standards, still low expectations, but with low standards, it kind of defeated the purpose of that. And sometimes I can hide behind that with the, even with the podcast and stuff, is like, oh yeah, but I don't really edit it or I don't really promote it. Because if I did edit it really professionally and I did promote it really professionally and then it failed, well, that's a harder thing for me to accept. So probably got to try and maintain, have that rule for myself around, right, still have the high standards and then just accept that what happens what happens.
Yeah, I love that. That's unreal. It's yeah, it's that holds true for everything. Have high standards, then have zero expectations and accept everything that happens. Yeah, like if you're playing a rugby match, it's the exact same. Like hold yourself to high standards, give everything that you've got, compete in the moment, and then don't have any expectations. And a big reason I feel that things don't go well for players mentally is the expectations that they have. So they go into games expecting themselves to play well, expecting the team to play well, expecting something to happen, but the game is the unknown. And more so than golf, or I'll let maybe you comment on that, but the game is such an unknown. I'm in with Canterbury 19s at the moment, rugby team, and we were chatting before training. We were just doing some mental skills. We were chatting about nerves, and the two main things that came up were I get nervous because I'm afraid of messing up and making mistakes, or I get nervous because of the unknown, and I'm afraid of
Mm.
that. And yeah, the making mistakes is everything that we're talking about. You have to get over that. But then the unknown is true. It's the game is the unknown. But um, yeah, I think that
Mm.
you really you do yourself over when you're like, I need to play well today. I need to do X, Y, Z today. We need to do this today, that today. You have to accept that it is the unknown and just walk into the unknown.
Yeah. There's a couple of things there. That expectations one thing we find in golf is, let's say, one of the players isn't putting very well, and then they spend a week or 2 weeks or whatever putting, and they do a lot of work, and then they think that gives them the right to putt well on Saturday. And so trying to blow that mindset up is you're owed nothing by your practice or by anybody. You do the work because that's what you do. The other part to that expectation thing, I heard this once in terms of basketball, but it can be transferred to golf and probably rugby as well, but would be if you knew that every single shot you hit in golf was going to go into the hole, from a distance where, not on a 500 meter par five, but let's say every shot within 200, you're so good that every shot went in the hole. How long would you play golf for? I think you'd give up pretty quickly because it'd be as boring as batshit. You'd have this mastery, but actually, to your point, it's that unknown that actually brings us back. And rugby would be the same. If every play you scored a try, you'd get over that pretty quickly. We love it's funny because we're anxious about the unknown, but in many ways, that's the bit that we love. So I find that interesting.
Yeah, and that's the exact same with life. Like the when everything is easy, you start to get discontented, or you're just disengaged, or you want more. You want a challenge, and it's something that I always have to bring awareness to it myself. In that, when things are very challenging, when I'm doing different things and I'm trying to, you know, do lots of different things, and it's difficult, is understand that that's what it's about. It's not about waiting for to be at the top of the mountain or to be at the end of it, because when you do, you just got to find a new thing. And we are fulfilled when we're growing, but and when we're improving, and when we're striving to be the best versions of ourselves in pursuit of something. But that space of growing is difficult. So it's like we're fulfilled when it's difficult. It's kind of like a paradox.
Yeah. Even the cold showers is like that. Then you literally every day is the internal chat. Oh, maybe I just have a warm one today. I'm got a sore back, or and you can. It's bizarre just watching myself have this internal chat around what reasons I have not to have a cold shower, despite the fact that I know that it feels great, and I've not once ever regretted it. And sometimes it's harder when it's colder and stuff. But that same thing, that struggle or that challenge is in the end what we love. And if you do, if I do go, oh no, I was having a warm one today, and then I do, you just feel shit afterwards, and you took the comfortable way, but it actually just feels worse.
Yeah, 100%. And in that moment when you take the comfortable, you take the easy option, it's mad, isn't it? It's mad how you feel worse. And it's like, too, it's just you versus you. You can't lie. You can't lie to yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you were saying there about owed nothing by your preparation, so what do you mean by that? In that, I think is what you mean, like, say with rugby, or I'm sure golf's similar. Like, you gotta do the work, or it is similar, of course. It is. You gotta do the work. You gotta train well. You gotta eat well, sleep well. You have to do everything right Monday to Friday. Because if you cut corners, then it's going to be on your mind come Saturday. Like, if you don't do the work during the week, it's going to be playing on your mind Saturday, and that will often hold you back. But whereas if you do the work, you can kind of like rest assured. It's like, all right, I've done the work. Let's see what happens. But so yeah, what do you mean exactly by like owed nothing by your preparation?
Yeah, good question. I find golf can be quite transactional in the way that people view things. Um, so if I, like they will practice so that they can play well, or they'll um, go to the gym so that they can hit it further. But for me, I'd try and remove that transactional nature of it and go, I am someone who loves the mastery of working really hard this week. So that going back to that standards, I have really high standards in my training because that's who I am, not because I want to play well on Saturday. Obviously, I do want to play well on Saturday, but I train hard and work hard because that's who I am. I'm the sort of person that gets up, goes to the gym, eats well, sleeps well. I do everything in my preparation, not so that I can play well on Saturday, just because that's who I am. So for me, more of an identity statement around why we do stuff rather than because I don't think that lasts very long with. So one thing my wife would crack up at this, but I for my relationship with the gym is oh, it's testing. It's a testing relationship. I don't go to the gym very often, and the reality is I want to go to the gym and I want to get results, and so it's really transactional in nature. Um, I I think after a week, if I haven't noticed anything, God, I'm not any stronger, or I haven't lost any weight, then so to me that's a real transactional relationship, and that can't last very long. Whereas my wife goes to the gym maybe I don't know, she like 15 times a week, and she never weighs herself. She doesn't worry about what weights she's lifting. She doesn't record her times when she goes for runs. She just trains and trains hard because that's who she is. So she's not doing it for any sort of transactional thing like I am, where I go, no, I'm trying to lose weight, and by you can only survive like that, I think, when it's not your identity for a few weeks, and which is why I have the relationship I have with the gym. So if I could change it, which I can, obviously it just takes work, but I've got to get out of that mindset of if I eat well, then I deserve to have this. No, you eat well because that's who you are and that's the right thing to do. Does that make sense?
Oh, that's incredible. I love it. Yeah, yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah, spot on. Yeah, who you are. Um, you have a you decide who you want to be, and then your actions back up that person, and then your self-talk is tied in there too, and it all just re it's like a cycle kind of, isn't it, that all just reaffirms itself. It's like, this is who I am, and you see
Mm.
yourself as that person, and then you do the actions. But like you say, you have to love it, or you have to, and you can love being that person. Like with the cold showers, bringing it back, it's not to say that when the cold water is hitting you that you love it. No, like, it's
Yeah.
easier for me to say that I love the warm bed more than I love the cold water. Don't get me wrong. But I love being the type of person that gets up at 5, gets in a cold shower, meditates, goes to the gym, and then starts my day. Um, and there's all the physiological benefits to that too. It's like your wife with the gym. Like, I love the gym too, but like, there's physiological benefits. Or you with eating well. It's not like I love eating well because I'm that type of person because I want other people to look at me and think I'm great because I eat well. It's like, no, no, no. It's just a very it's just your story or what you say. And I was watching that quarterbacks thing on Netflix, Patrick Mahomes and the couple others, and like, when he was playing, he's like, "This is who I am. This is who I am. This is what I do," and
Yeah.
exactly, like, and that's unreal. Like, I love that. That's exactly what you're saying. Like, he is the person who walks into the fire on a big day on Sunday and plays and balls out, and that's what he is. That's how he sees himself, and there's no disconnect there. You know what I mean? And it's interesting. This kind of comes into imposter syndrome. And when I was younger, I still haven't. when I was younger, I would have had it a lot, but I believe that you change your self image, you change how you see yourself. You stop seeing yourself as, and this is something that I've realized in the last couple of years, stop seeing yourself as this like person at the bottom, because then you'll of course have imposter syndrome always when you step forward into, when you're growing and you're stepping forward into a new challenge, a new level. You got to see yourself as at the top level and act like you're at the top level and carry yourself like you're at the top level, and then you start to feel like you're at the top level, and then it happens, and then you be at the top level versus constantly seeing yourself as this bottom feeder, you know.
Mm. Yeah, for sure. We have a chat, similar one with the younger players, where if they are, let's say the best player in Canterbury, and the best open male golfer, say in Canterbury, and if they showed up to a junior event, they would have a certain, and they were playing in this junior event, and they'd have a certain strut to them. They'd be confident because they know they're going to beat everybody. They would know that they were the big dog, and as a result, would probably go out and have, let's say, 65. So they'd play well. They'd shoot 65. Golf would be easy. If we took that exact same golf course with the exact same conditions, but they showed up, and now the field was the US Open field, and Tiger Woods was there in his prime, and Phil Mickelson and Rory McIlroy. Well, now I guarantee you your body language and your behavior is different, because now you're not seeing yourself as the big dog. Now you're seeing yourself as, and you wouldn't, I don't think you would go out and shoot 65. And that's one of the things that I think is fascinating about all sport, but how that environmental shift, the actual task of the golf course stays exactly the same. Your job stays the same. And unlike other sports like rugby, I'm not influenced. Like, you and I can play golf together, and I'm not influenced at all by what you do. Um, whereas rugby, obviously, you got two teams fighting for the same ball. But I guarantee you that player body language would be way different, behavior would be different, and as a result, the outcome would be different, even though nothing within the actual technical part of the game has changed.
Yeah, this is, to my understanding, this is exactly what manifesting is. And how you feel, how you behave, your body language, what you think, and how you carry yourself. And like, it's your choice. Like you said, that golfer has a choice, and you they're choosing to look at their external environment and then determine how they should feel, act, think, walk, etc. Whereas you don't look at your external environment, you choose to feel that way at all times, and then you become it. And you look at Israel Adesanya, Conor McGregor, all these people, look at them when they're starting out, look at the way they were. And it's so obvious then when you look back, and it's not chance either. Um, these other people, they have something different. It's like when they're starting out, you look at them and you're like, geez, look at the way he is, the way he carries himself. And that's because they believe, like, those people have said, like, I was a champ before I was a champ, and they carry themselves that way. They don't look at their external environment and then determine how confident they should be. They said it themselves, and I think that's the key. That's what it's about.
Yeah. Hard to do.
It is, and it's something. Have you heard of Joe Dispenza?
Yeah, I have heard the name. How have I heard that name?
Yeah, so he's really interesting person. It's hard to do 100%, but essentially we create these stories. Like, you say to yourself what you are, who you are, you know? And he speaks a lot about, and he does, about meditations whereby essentially you meditate, and then you get up and act like the person you want to be. Pure and simple. And difficult, but not impossible. And that's exactly what we're talking about here. It's like, that golfer can act like the person on with the amateur field or the US Open field. Like he can choose how he acts. And yeah, it's difficult, but that's where it's at. And yeah, Dr. Joe Dispenza, really interesting stuff. Really interesting stuff. And then it's played out so much like Kobe Bryant, all these greats, like that's what they were doing. Like they didn't go in Kobe didn't go into the NBA year one and go, I'll see how I go. Let me just kind of dip my toe in here, see how it goes. And like, no, they see themselves as the best. And I suppose not being afraid of failure is the other thing, because you gotta move forward into that really unknown, being fully sure of yourself, and yeah, whatever it'll be. Like you're not connected to those outcomes. You know what I mean? I think when you're connected to outcomes, and it makes it very difficult when you're worrying about failing all the time.
Yeah, and that's probably the key bit there, isn't it? Because if you do show up to that US Open field and strutting around, people are pretty quick to put you in your place. Who does he think he is? And then if you do play badly, well, then that's even harder on your ego. So that's back to that standards, expectations, acceptance, but you got to maintain those standards. I had a lady on my podcast recently, Rachel Vickery. She was a gymnast, and she's a performance coach now. And we were might not have actually been on the podcast when we had this chat, but we were having a chat around probably back to that identity stuff. And she was saying, you can't bullshit yourself. So if you're thinking about let's say public speaking, and you're not a very good public speaker, you can't just go, I'm a good public speaker, I'm a good public speaker, I'm a good public speaker, because your brain will go, no, you're not, Jay, you're full of shit. So, but what you can do is you can say things like, I'm the sort of person that likes a challenge. And the actions that I've taken over the last week, cold showers, getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning, going for a run, or whatever it is, these are votes for the identity of the person you want to be. So I guess that would be a way to get, because I think to your point, when we were talking about, we do know if we're lying to ourselves. So when I say hard to show up at the US Open and act like you're the big dog, well, your brain probably will have some sense, but you've also got enough identity or behaviors that you've done over whatever period of time that back up that identity, which you can hang your hat on. I am the sort of person that works hard, therefore I can play. My golf can be good, or I love a challenge. So, yeah, constant work on, though, I think, Brian.
Yeah, yeah. And no, that makes sense. And what I suppose, what I'm getting at, and what Joe Dispenza gets at, is that it's not about being fake, it's about bringing what you have within you to the fore. So the golfer
Nice.
knows he can shoot 65. It's, you have it within you. Do you get me? And that's the thing. We
Yeah.
all play so small in life. Like we all know. Like I for years knew I could do a podcast. You probably the same, but you don't do it. And because you start walking around as this low person, and you start telling yourself, but you're like, you've so much more in you. So I suppose it's about bringing all of you to the fore, and stop seeing yourself as this small fry who shouldn't compete in this field. It's the same golf course. It's the same. You've hit so many golf balls. You know you can do it. So stop looking around at everything around you and putting yourself down. And that's the same with all life. Like I know right now I can do things that are levels above where I'm currently at right now, and it just hasn't happened yet, but it will happen. I'm sure you're the exact same. Like within you that you're not maxing out here. in life and what you're doing. Like we we know that we've more. And so it's about yeah, being that more, and then being that, yeah, and then and expressing that.
Mm. How do you reflect? Do you reflect on, um, you know, if you notice that you have played small, um, how do you reflect on that? Whether it's in your business podcast coaching with the 19s team, do you have a process in which you reflect at the end of the day or on moments?
I do reflect at the end of the day, and like I one thing I've accepted once again, which I didn't have when I was younger, is that I'm always learning and growing. So mistakes are okay. I would have held myself back from being what I know I could be because of fear of failure, fear of, many different things. But
Mm.
it's the self-image thing, yeah, changes because, like, you say when I was a player, even playing, like, it's like I knew how good I was, but then I wouldn't always walk as that player would. I wouldn't always express that. I would have, as you say, look around at the environment. Oh my God, look at all the players. I remember it, like, look at all the players on the opposition team. Look at the guys I'm playing with. Oh, geez. And all this stuff starts going in your head. Whereas, yeah, it's once again, yeah, just do reflect, and it's just learning. Like, it's like if and when, it's like often, like I did a talk there last week and just didn't go that well. And I look back and I was like, I didn't practice enough. Simple as probably maybe a bit, I don't know. I just thought I would be able to not, and it just didn't go as well as I would have
Mm.
wished it did. And, people at the end, oh, that was great, da, 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 but I know it could have been better. And I just, yeah, look back and go, I was rushing around that day. I didn't give it the time it deserved. And I need to be better there.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's yeah, it's interesting. I think the self-image is a huge thing because I think it holds you back. I think, be it even with golfers, if you're working with, like they have it within them. It's about getting what they have within them out often, isn't it?
Mm. Yeah. I think about that a bit. And I think about that from a coaching point of view and from a even like a technical coaching point of view. I often think the player has the answers. And initially, when I first start working with juniors that come into our program, they possibly not used to that thinking. I'll say, what do you think, and how would you do this? And I think they think that, oh, you're the coach, you're meant to tell me. And I'd say to them, look, you're the expert of you. You know you better than anybody knows you, even when it comes to injuries and stuff. The physio is great, but you know you. And so, even from a coaching point of view, I like to, and I think over time they start to trust me. I think at first they think it's a bit of a test and I'm testing their knowledge or something, but so it takes a bit of time to build that relationship where they've got the trust. But I think about Maori carving, and they start, or any sort of um, artist like that, where they start with a bit of wood, and um, the art. Can you hear that noise
It's all good.
in the background? Um, the art is inside the wood, and so the job of the carver is to just strip it back to bring the art out. And I think about that as coaches. That's our job, is to strip the wood off the carving and let the carving show its beauty, rather than, I think probably what I did when I was a younger coach was just add layers to it. Grab that data that I talked about earlier and throw that on, and all of a sudden you've got this heavy, cumbersome bit of wood that's of no use to anybody. So I think there's a bit of that, where I think the answer, your point, I think the answer for everything is inside us. We just need, good people around us, hopefully, to help us strip it back.
Yeah. Yeah. And with something with rugby coaching, I just believe like that less is more as well. And kind of what you're saying, like you say, strip it back. Like rugby at the end of the day is a simple game. And then like golf at the end of the day is relatively simple too. You know, you swing it and hit it, and these golfers you work with, they've been hitting golf balls for they've hit 10,000 golf balls, 100,000 golf balls before they've ever seen one piece of data. Maybe that's changing now because maybe kids these days have range finders and all that. But you get me, like, you know, they're swinging clubs. So the feel, the touch, all that stuff. And it's, yeah, I was the same when I started out coaching. You're kind of adding stuff on, you know, you're telling players stuff probably just to make yourself feel important. Whereas yeah, it's often just a little tweak here or there.
Yeah, I wonder whether, and I don't know, I've David Hill, who I had on my podcast last, he's rugby coach. He always takes the piss out of me for my lack of my lack of knowledge, my level of ignorance around rugby and some of the stupid shit I say. But you look at Jace Ryan when he came into the All Blacks, and from the outside, it looks like he's had a massive influence. But and most of the stuff that he talks about that I've heard. He's just simplifying. Sounds like he just went in and simplified what they needed to do. Found out what the core roles were, and let's just nail that. So, he sounded, I'm sure it was a whole lot more to it than that, but it sounded like he just simplified stuff for them.
Yeah, I don't know what he did, but yeah, it's like at the end of the day, you want the players to have a free mind, or like for them to be able to switch off the conscious thinking mind, and probably same in golf for sure. Like you don't want them to think about how they're holding their wrists or how they're gripping the club or how they're standing. Like, you know, you don't want them in their head about all
Yeah.
that stuff. And it's the same with rugby. And like I've seen some game plans that like I've genuinely at lower levels. Like I've seen game plans at very lower levels that I've played way higher than, and I've kind of thought, geez, am I out of touch here? Like am I not up to speed anymore? Because this level, like, you know, just yeah. And I'm like, because I don't think I'd get that. Like if I were in that team, I'd have to just blank out everything that's being said and just play.
Yeah. I wonder how often that happens too.
I'd say more than you'd think. Definitely. Definitely. It's coaches. Yeah, definitely. Coaches at like even, yeah, just very levels where kids or players should just be playing, and coaches saying, do this, do this, do this, do this, then here, then here. They probably don't even know what they're talking about themselves. You mentioned a couple of guests there in the podcast. What have been some big learnings you've had on it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Probably the themes have been pretty similar, and I wonder whether you or I tend to speak to people that interest me, so therefore the messaging probably would be similar, if that makes sense, and stuff that potentially I already believe in and believe is important. But probably the big one would be, and again, is this because of my bias, but the humanistic nature of performance, regardless of what the sport is. And I think about two names that spring to mind immediately. Obviously, Wayne Smith being one of them, but also Alan Bunting, who's taken over from Smithy as Black Ferns coach. Most of those top coaches, Mike Hesson, obviously, now that I've said those two names, there's a whole lot of names that come into my head, but a lot of these guys could coach any sport that they like. And I often say that, Alan Bunting could come in and do an awesome job with the golf team with limited knowledge of golf, but because he knows people. And then I think about that and think of Christian Penny, who's now with High Performance Sport New Zealand, but did come from Toi Whakaari, New Zealand Drama School. So you think, Like he was a director there, so I guess that's a little bit similar to coaching, but in terms of no relevance to sport, or certainly no relevance to golf. But his understanding of people and how to interact and how to get people to think and how to ask really good questions through relationships, again, means that he would be successful. And then I think of going to another extreme. Bill Bestick was a SAS soldier, and then he became a doctor, and then he became an anaesthetist, and now he's a commercial helicopter pilot and an anaesthetist. And the same behaviours and interesting, being in the SAS and having quite a like a military based authoritarian style of leadership of yes sir, three bags full sir, to having to go into an ED and trying to get buy-in. So I guess that same bit around that relationship's critical, and the environment plays a part in that relationship. So when you're in the military, the environment's different, and when you're in an ED, the environment's different, but it's still the same thing. It's still the same core. You've got to do your job with really high standards, but then understand that the only way to get the best out of other people, unless you're in the military, is to have strong relationship skills and, probably show, like I think about Smithy and Alan Bunting and Mike Hesson, and not knowing Mike as well, but they've got a deep care for people. And, Smithy genuinely cares for people, which is why he pops up everywhere helping everybody. Like why would he be helping? Like, he's been my mentor for maybe 12 years now. What's in it for him to help a golf coach? But now that I know him, that's just that. So going back to that identity thing, that's just who he is. And so probably the theme for the podcast would be, most of the guests I'd say would put the human interaction, the human relationships, put humans first. And then, watching Smithy work, it's often, he's obviously incredibly good technically and tactically, but I don't think that's where he's getting his gains. It's any different to any other coach in New Zealand who probably has an equal amount of technical and tactical nous. That's the easy bit, right? I assume in golf, it's the easy bit. You just go on YouTube and you'll find any number of opinions about a golf swing, but having that relationship is probably the critical bit that I've learned over that time.
100%, yeah. And when you speak about biases, about your potential guests feeding into your biases, that certainly feeds into mine. And that's what I think that I was, when I mentioned those, say, coaches that are overcomplicating the game, they're thinking too much of the tactical and less of the humanistic side, like you say, telling them 10 things to do isn't going to make them play better, even if those 10 things are right,
Yeah. And the one thing I think about is, as a coach, how do we know especially in rugby, like you're dealing with 15 or 23 or whatever your group is, people who have had different experiences, who see the world differently and are going to see the world differently. And so, teaching, like imagine coaching Richie McCaw at the breakdown, like he feels it every time, he's in it, he's in that moment. But I'm sure he still wants to sharpen his sword and get better, or did want to sharpen his sword and get better at the breakdown. So from a coaching point of view, you can't just go and tell him what to do because he's the one doing it and noticing it. But I guess the art of coaching would be trying to bring some of that stuff out of Richie and get him to refine his thinking, which is a hell of a challenge, but that's where those guys are. I think they do separate themselves, those top coaches.
100%. Yeah, good point. And I've often thought about that, in that, Tiger Woods, Roger Federer, all have coaches or had coaches, of course, but none of them would have played next or near the level that, none of those coaches would have played anywhere near the level. And yeah, I
Mm.
suppose you need to have a real lack of ego as well, or you need to put that aside as a coach, which once again isn't, I think, for younger, inexperienced coaches, isn't the case. They kind of think I'm the coach. I certainly thought that was the way when I first started coaching. I thought that was the way I needed to be, or just tell them everything to do. When I was 21, starting out, just tell them do this, do this, do this. But yeah, I suppose you work with them, don't you? And yeah, like I say, develop that relationship.
Yeah, and it's hard. I think sometimes the first time if they ask a question and you don't know the answer, in the past I probably would have made something up on the spot, talked around it, said enough big words that it confused them and they didn't ask me any more questions. Whereas now I think the answer is to just go, look, I don't know, but why don't we do some research and, we'll have a chat and find out what we think and what have we noticed, and we'll come back and explore that. But that's hard to do, I think, as a coach, because your ego gets hit.
Yeah, and I suppose you need to be comfortable. Yeah, comfortable in your own skin. Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did it come about? Wayne Smith mentoring you.
So I can tell you how, but I do know, as I said, how he accepted it. But DG said to me, "You need a mentor. You need someone who's going to challenge you." And I listed a few names in golf, and he kept saying, "How well do you know them?" And I'd go, "Yeah, really well." And he'd go, "No, not them. Then it needs to be someone that you're scared to sit down with." So I thought about it for a while, and I've always really enjoyed. I still do. I really enjoy the aftermatch. I'm a bit of a geek. I watch the press conferences on YouTube after the test matches and stuff. So I really like hearing the coaches' insights, albeit they're probably pretty scripted and, they don't give too much away, but I always really enjoyed it anyway. So I just thought, Wayne Smith's pretty good. And so I wrote an email to support@chiefs.co.nz or help@chiefs or info, one of those bloody emails. And I literally said, hey, I'm a golf coach based in Tauranga. Appreciate that you probably get requests like this all the time and you're probably not going to pass it on, but I'm looking for a mentor and I'd love it to be Wayne Smith. And I don't know what I was thinking in sending it. What a dick. But then anyway, I sent it, and then I was sitting down for breakfast literally the next morning and had my laptop open and a little ding message comes through and it's Wayne Smith. And I didn't want to read it because I thought, he's probably saying no, but thanks. And so I delayed reading it for a bit and then ended up reading it. And he said, this is like a Tuesday. And he said, mate, I'd love to be involved. Bring your stuff over to Cambridge on Friday at 11 o'clock. We'll meet at this cafe. And I thought, shit, I don't have any stuff. I've got nothing. What am I going to take to Wayne Smith? So we sat there for probably 3 hours in this cafe, 3 or 4 hours. And I remember getting into my car after we'd finished and just turned my voice recorder on my phone and just tried to download everything that I'd remembered. I sat there for about 10 minutes. And it was so cool because there was so much crossover. One of the first things he said to me was, what does your week look like? And I said to him, I'd see the players on Tuesday. And this is back when I was doing probably that 60-minute interval coaching that I was talking about at the start there. And he said, well, when do you watch them play? And I said, no, I don't watch them play. And functionally, it's hard to in golf for a number of reasons. But he's like, what do you mean you don't watch them play? You just change their swing every Tuesday, but you haven't seen them do anything? He said, that's ridiculous. That's like me going to the Chiefs on Tuesday and Thursday and then saying, righto, boys, see you on Tuesday. Look forward to hearing how your game went. He's like, you're losing all your learning opportunities. And so it was really good to see someone outside of golf because, the whole thing of, oh, no, that's not how we do it in golf didn't really stand up as an argument. And then, so since then, probably over that time, he was at the Chiefs at the time with Dave Rennie and DG. And I didn't want to lean on DG. I knew I could have asked DG to ask Smithy, but I didn't want to lean on that. So I didn't. And then I went into the Chiefs a bit when Rennie and Smithy were there, and Smithy would organise. I remember one session with a kicking session with Aaron Cruden because pre-shot routine for kicking relatively similar to golf. And then 2019, I went and so obviously had that relationship over the years, and then 2019, I went up and spent a week with him at Kobe in Japan. Dave Dillon was head coach, and spent a week with those guys just observing and how they do stuff. And Andy Ellis was playing at the time, and just get a sense of who the real leaders are and why. So someone like Andy Ellis, you get a real sense of, it's pretty obvious why he was an All Black when you see his behaviours at, I don't know how old he would have been then, I would assume mid-30s when he was playing at Kobe in 2019, and just incredibly high standards and the ultimate professional. And you think he'd already achieved a lot in his rugby career. In theory, you might think he should be winding down, but no, still had really high standards around what he did. And so opportunities like that are awesome. People often say to me, why do you go and watch rugby for your PD? Like, nothing to do with golf, but just think, mate, there's so much to learn. I think rugby globally do a really good job of a lot of the coaching. And I think we're blessed here in New Zealand to have coaches who are open and willing to share, like Smithy. And one of the main things he said to me is, you have to give everything. This is on their very first meeting. He said, you don't own anything that you know. You have to give everything you know away. And he said two things. It'll drive you to get better. And I can't remember the other thing actually, but it was something along the lines of that's how we should be behaving. But there's a saying in Stoicism which is relatively similar, which says, the only wealth which you will keep forever is the wealth you have given away. And I think about that, and that would sum up Smithy really well. Like, he just openly shares stuff with everyone. And that's been awesome. And I had a game of golf with him here maybe 2 weeks ago. So the relationship's really different now. I consider him a good friend and still an awesome mentor. But the fear, to DG's point of, you need to have fear around. I don't have that fear anymore of Smith. He's just a lovely man, and he's been awesome to me.
Very cool. That's really, really interesting with that stoic quote. And it's kind of like what you put out is what you get back, and what his just philosophy about sharing. And you help so many people, you'll get the help back, or it'll come back to you, that you don't need to worry then. I think that's really good.
Yeah.
And I love as well, DG, the big thing about being courageous, and what you mentioned there as well. And it's something that I, once again, from chatting to him and then getting his book, and that a mantra or just a mindset, I suppose, that I adopted, just be courageous, just every day, because every day there's an opportunity to be courageous, reach out to Wayne Smith, send the email, make the call, instead of sending a text when you could call and a call would be better, make the call. Away from sport. And that's, once again, just probably tying it back to what you were saying at the very start with what DG does with the golfers, is that it can't just be when you rock up to play a rugby match to be courageous, or to play at the edge, or not be worrying about what people think, or getting over your fear of failure. You have to live it. It has to be your everyday. And it's something, just that be courageous, just something in my mind. And just it never goes away, but I suppose you just grow so much, like every single day there's fears, there's uncertainty, no matter how much you do. But I suppose when you have that mindset, you just you grow so much as a person so quickly. It's mad.
Mm. And even thinking sometimes that courage doesn't mean jumping out of a plane. Like to your point, it can mean making a phone call.
Yeah. And it's like, you know it too. And that's just going back to what you were saying earlier. It's like, you know, if you're taking the easy route, you know, if you're living it, and you can't lie. You
Yeah.
can't, you can't lie to yourself. You can't get away from it. You know what I mean? And just that ties back to just, what kind of person do you want to be? Who do you want to be?
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it.
Um, what's the, I suppose just wrapping it up, but, what's the biggest challenge around your podcast? I started listening about 18 months ago. What was the biggest challenge you found in the whole journey of it?
Um, Probably that transactional bit that I spoke of earlier on, around why am I doing it. So initially it started out because it was DG and I, and because I wanted more people to hear from him. Like I was lucky enough to, you know, have a coffee or a chat with him every week, um, and just used to think, far out, man, you need more people need to hear you speak. So that was my main motivator. And we did it during COVID, and we did it live on Facebook. So we were getting, you're doing it live on Facebook, you can see how many people are watching while you're doing it. And, like there's an initial excitement, and you get Wayne Smith on, and that amps the numbers up a bit. Here's our first guest. And then you start to see the numbers drop, and then think, oh, now is it as good? And then starting to watch the numbers, and that's what you're basing your podcast on. And I've gone through phases of that, going, hold on, what did I initially start this for? It wasn't transactional in that do a good podcast, get good downloads, or people watching on Facebook Live. And so the biggest battle for me was around probably trying to be true to myself. What is the purpose? And if I'm honest and I'm being selfish about it, my motivator is that I speak to people who interest me and who I want to learn from. And for a while there, I had scripted questions. And I can't remember who it was, but someone said to me, it was after DG had finished up, someone said to me, oh, you don't sound as natural, you don't sound as flowing. I think I can't remember now, it was a couple of years ago, but I think I had a guest on that I didn't want to stuff up. And so, not that I want to stuff up any guest, but I know a lot of them, so it's a bit easier. But so I had this list of questions, and I wasn't really listening to the answer. I was actually just waiting for a gap so that I could ask the next question. And then having the courage to, probably a little bit like this, having the courage to just go, let's just ask one question. I'm pretty sure it was RJ Smith, actually, who said to me, just ask one question and then just see where it goes. And that stuck with me. I reckon he's awesome. And so, but the courage to do that, to go, man, I've got nothing. I mean, you do your prep, but I don't have a list of questions now. I have themes about what I think I want to find out from that person, but it's not scripted questions. But it probably still goes back to that transactional nature of looking at downloads and looking at Instagram. If I put something up on Instagram, did I get much interaction? And it's a bit of a thing for me, mate, because I do want it to be successful. I'm not saying I don't. And so that balance, like I said before, around have really high standards. And can I hand on heart say that my standards for it at the moment are where they should be, or where I would like them to be? Probably not. But it's a hobby project at the moment, so it's a time thing. And so probably my biggest challenge is still being really true to what am I doing this for? And if I do want to grow it, then why do I want to grow it? What's my purpose of growing it? Is it about me then, or is it about the original? So I've got probably that little bit of conflict at the moment.
Cool. Yeah. No, I hear you with all of that. In that, yeah, it's I hear you with that, and that kind of challenge, or once again, paradox with looking at the numbers because you want to make a good podcast that you want to impact people and help people, and you want people to like it, but you don't want to be just looking at the numbers all the time and judging your conversations upon that and looking back and going, and getting hung up on
Mm.
that. And yeah, it is the exact same. Just want to have chats with people that interest you, people that, yeah, essentially that. But then that can be, yeah, then if you get caught up in numbers, I don't know, yeah, it's difficult in that way. I find that as well. It's like I'm like, stop looking at the
You
numbers,
there, Brian?
Brian. But then it's like, yeah, um, I find myself doing that as well. It's like, stop looking at the numbers, but then you want it to get to people, you know? It's a hard one. Are you there?
You there, mate?
You are. Um, um, well, yeah, thanks a mil. Thanks a mil for your time, Jay. Been brilliant. What's the rest of your day look like? Are you there?